Hello everyone, David Atkins, target individual. Today I'm going to be talking about synthetic telepathy slash auditory harassment slash voice to skull technology. This is serious stuff, and I'm coming out of John Hall's book called Guinea Pigs, and it's chapter 5 in John Hall's book, and I'm just going to read it, and I'm going to try to go fast, but I mean, it's good information. A lot of people are suffering from this, and they're pumping voices and sounds into people's heads and their houses, and they're trying to call people mental when really it's them doing it. So I'm going in, it's going to talk about the psychiatric industry, these weapons, the history, and everything. So I hope y'all enjoy this. And I'm going to start reading out of Project Soul Catcher tomorrow. So, okay, all right, we got to start with the Bible verse. Dear friends, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, because many false prophets have gone into the world. That's 1 John 4:1. One of the hallmark symptoms that distinguish between the mentally normal and the mentally ill is the presence of voices in the head. It's described as one of the symptoms of delusional disorder, psychosis, schizoaffective disorder, and schizophrenia. Referred to as auditory hallucinations, their presence in a myriad of psychiatric disorders has been the fodder of countless journal articles and psychiatric test books. For some time now, one debate has been taking place in the psychiatric community as to when auditory hallucinations constitute mental illness. Traditionally, anyone hearing voices that no one else can hear have been presumed to be mentally ill. A more moderate approach ascertains into context during which the auditory hallucinations are heard before passing judgment. For instance, it's personally acceptable to tell others that God told you to start going to church more regularly. God instructing you to kill your neighbors, however, is generally seen as mental illness. As an even more liberal approach to auditory hallucinations holds the belief that hearing voices is acceptable in the absence of personal or socially destructive behavior. Moreover, the Hearing Voices movement, with an organization started by Marius Room from Netherlands, has advocated treating AH, or auditory hallucinations, successfully coping techniques learned from other voice hearers. To the date, the techniques have not generally been incorporated into common psychiatric practice. The reason psychiatry has increasingly become a mechanism of control and discipline rather than a medical art. There will be more regarding this statement in a later chapter. An exhaustive search through psychiatric journals regarding AH, or auditory harassment, will turn up some very interesting facts. Most of the studies done regarding AH are focused on patients with diagnosed with schizophrenia. Schizophrenia occurs readily in males and females, but differs in peak age onset between the sexes. Men usually develop schizophrenia between the ages of 20 to 28 years, while women may be diagnosed between the ages of 26 to 32 years. This is an important fact to remember for later in this text. Also, the geographic distribution of schizophrenia varies wildly. However, people living in urban areas seem to be more likely diagnosed. Descriptions of the voices they hear, single voices, groups of voices, schizophrenics often describe the voices as persecutory in nature, criticizing their behavior or appearance. More often, the voices are described as garbled and unintelligible, akin to many muffled voices in a subway. The etiology of the schizophrenia is unknown. However, excessive dopamine is thought to play a role. Drugs that limit dopamine production or block dopamine receptors are the mainstay of treatment. It is thought that the schizophrenic affects 0.4% to 0.6% of the population. A common belief among those diagnosed with schizophrenia is that the voices and thoughts are being inserted in their head from an external source. Two startling facts are apparent when one reviews the literature on schizophrenia and its association with auditory hallucinations. The same holds true for AH secondary to psychosis, non-schizophrenic, and delusional disorder. Firstly, few of the studies ever mention the specific dialogues attributed to the voices. They're described as pleasant, persecutory, or religious in nature without any specificity to the content of the dialogue. It's almost as if presumed that hearing the voices at all, regardless of their content, is a symptom of mental illness. Regarding schizophrenia, the use of white noise or static over radio or television often described as a coping mechanism to drown out the voices. This is an important description that will be further discussed later in this chapter. Secondly, there's absolutely no mention in any of the psychiatric studies of the possibility that technology exists to place voices in one head. One would assume that with psychiatrists at the helm of early mind control studies, there would be at least a suggestion that we now have the technology to reproduce the symptoms of schizophrenia. Thousands of people are hearing voices, just voicing that complaint. Individuals, many of them professionals with no history of mental illness, are complaining of hearing voices. The number of these complaints far exceeds published percentages of schizophrenia and delusional disorders as a percentage of total population. It is my opinion that many of the people complaining of auditory harassment may indeed be victims of harassment technology and not a mental disease. I find it highly unlikely that large groups of schizophrenics voicing similar complaints would be corresponding with each other over the internet looking for answers to their dilemma. However, that's exactly what is happening. So does the technology exist to place voices in one head or surroundings that only they can hear, mimicking the symptoms of mental illness? The literature indeed does illustrate the fact that such technology exists. Moreover, research has been underway for quite some time with the goal of placing communications in a person's head. Admittedly, some of the research has noble expectations. However, most of it has been used weapons-based research with less noble expectation. So why does the psychiatric community refuse to consider technological harassment as the etiology of auditory hallucinations and persons usually required to see them? We will ponder the answer to that question in a later chapter dedicated in its entirety to psychiatric profession. For now, we will continue with the technological causes of what may appear to be auditory hallucinations. Dr. Patrick Flanagan was born in 1944 in Oklahoma and was known as somewhat of a child prodigy in scientific endeavors. At the age of 12 years old, he invented a missile detector system that quickly got the attention of the DoD. At age 14, he invented a device called the neurophone that allows sound to be transmitted to the brain through the skin. The year was 1958, and the device worked despite the crude technology of the day. As technology advanced, production of the neurophone continued with modern circuit boards and digital processing into the current model that is available today. The neurophone does have the ability to place voices in the head that only the user can hear. How it works has only been elucidated. Apparently, humans do have the ability to detect ultrasonic sound through tissues in the body. In 1991, Martin Lenhart at the University of Virginia discovered that humans can perceive ultrasonic sound through an inner ear organ called the saccule. The saccule is an internal organ, organ used for balance. However, when stimulated with ultrasonic sound, it sends neural signals to the part of the brain used for sound. It has been postulated that our ability to hear the pops and clicks of the dolphins while scuba diving is perceived through saccule. Capitalizing on this phenomenon, the neurophone utilizes two electrodes that may be placed anywhere on the body. The circuitry of the device has been engineered to provide a means for ultrasonic waves to be passed through the tissue to the saccule. The result of sound can be clearly heard as if it were coming from inside the brain. The current model of the neurophone has audio inputs that allow for music or meditation aids to be played through the electrodes in the brain. Obviously, schizophrenics do not hear voices as a result of electrodes placed on their body that transmit ultrasound. The neurophone merely sets the precedent for the obvious attempts to place audio on a person's head. Further research took the required steps to get the same results, without the need for electrodes. Some research took the path of finding ways to place silent, subliminal messages into the brain, while others focused on the audible component as a weapon and tool for harassment. The discoveries of Alan Frey paved the way for that latter. Research done on subliminal messaging is equally important and will be discussed later. For the most part, subliminal signals are non-audible and do not directly constitute auditory harassment. In 1960, while working at General Electric's Advanced Electronics Center at Cornell University, Frey discovered he could hear radar. The discovery came after a radar technician told him that he could hear the radar at one particular site where he worked. After some research, Frey asserted that the sound heard in the brain was secondary to the interaction of electromagnetic radiation and brain cells and was not heard through normal hearing mechanism. It was termed the Frey effect and set the basis for many ongoing studies into the intracranial communication. Frey went on to study the non-thermal effects of microwaves and came to see some very interesting conclusions. Microwaves belong to the part of the electromagnetic spectrum which are included in radar, microwave ovens, and all cell phones. Their non-thermal effects can be equally detrimental as their thermal effects, as witnessed every day in microwave ovens. Frey targeted various organs with microwaves and was able to reproduce detrimental effects, including heart arrhythmias and sudden death. Modulated microwave frequencies, those carrying a second embedded frequency, were found to be the most damaging. In 1975, Frey reported that microwave energy pulsed at certain modulations could breach the blood-brain barrier and induce neurologic changes. The DoD took a keen interest in Frey's research. They were intrigued not only with the use of microwave as a directed energy weapon, but as a carrier signal for communication to be placed directly in the brain. This is now called microwave auditory effect and has been extensively researched by the government and private institutions. Finally, the need for electrodes, as with the neurophone, was a thing of the past. The microwave auditory effect has been extensively studied, amazingly, in the psychological community. Dr. Rosa Sharp, Mark Grove were the first to capitalize on the effect while doing research for the Advanced Research Projects Agency at Walter Reed Army Institute of Research. In 1973, they were able to develop receiverless wireless technology for communication and were able to transmit single-syllable words into their own heads. In 1975, John Junt, the Laboratories of Experimental Neuropsychology, VA Hospital, Kansas City, Missouri, summarized and verified Dr. Sharp's finding in an article entitled Microwaves and Behavior. It was published in the American Psychologist, Volume 30, March 1975, number 3. Sharp and Grove used pulse-modulated microwave energy to transmit single syllables in the head. They were reluctant to attempt combinations of words for fear they would surpass safe exposure limits of microwave energy and induce detrimental thermal effects. Continued research has elucidated the most likely mechanism for the microwave auditory effect. The proposed mechanism is through a thermoelastic expansion of tissues in the head that transmit acoustic pressure wave to the cochlea. Once the cochlear receptors are stimulated, the sound is actually perceived through the same process normal for hearing. In 2003, published in the journal Bioelectromagnetics, J.A. Elder and C.K. Chow found that the auditory response is dependent on the energy in a single pulse and not on average power density. They also found that perception of the sound is somewhat dependent on head dimensions. Effective radio frequencies range from 2.4 to 10,000 megahertz, but an individual's ability to hear RF-induced sound is dependent upon higher frequency acoustic hearing in the KHZ range and above 5 KHZ kilohertz. Also, according to Elder and Chow, hearing RF-induced sound at exposure levels many orders of magnitude greater than the hearing threshold is considered to be biological effect without accompanying health effect. However, it does not appear they took psychiatric effects into account as the health effects. Many people worldwide appear to be victims of non-consensual experimentation regarding this technology. The ultimate result of this covert experimentation is usually the psychiatric diagnosis of delusional disorder. Despite attempts by the psychiatric community to destimulate mental illness, this diagnosis is usually very damning to an individual's social output and well-being. Many of these victims are living a Hitchcock-type existence, knowing they are sane in a world turned insane. Another researcher who has done extensive research on the migratory auditory effects, James Lynn. Lynn is a professional engineer at the University of Chicago and is a fellow of the IEEE. He has served as a chair on the URSI Commission of Electromagnetics and Biology and Medicine, as well as the IEEE Committee on Man and Radiation. He began publishing on the microwave auditory effect in the late 1970s and has authored several books on the effects of the electromagnetic spectrum on human biology. In his Advances in Electromagnetic Fields and Living Systems, he states, widespread applications of RF and microwave energy are found in RF article identification surveillance, on-body sensing, interrogation, novel active and passive security and detection technology, and proposed digital living network applications. Lynn concurred with Elder and Chow regarding thermoelastic expansion being the mechanism behind the microwave auditory effect in an article published in Health Physics in 2007 entitled Hearing of Microwave Pulses by Human and Animals, Effects and Mechanisms. In 1996, Alfred Ackerman proposed another method to pass audio signals through various media such as gases, liquids, and solids, while he did not specifically mention the human head in his patent application. I believe the method would allow for audio signals to be passed through the skull. Working for Martin Marietta Energy Systems Incorporated and funded by a contract from the Department of Energy, Ackerman devised the method to convert audio signals to electronic signals in the ultrasonic frequency range. The ultrasonic signals could then be converted to acoustical pressure waves that would transmit across a carrier medium such as liquids or solids. The acoustic waves could then be reconverted back to audio signals. This would involve modulating the human voice audio signal on an ultrasonic carrier frequency that would also be carried across the medium with an acoustic wave. Once the carrier signal is passed through the liquid-solid medium, it can be demodulated, leaving only the audio signal intact. Thus, the system can be used for communication without the use of traditional frequencies. In his patent, Ackerman mentions that the value of this method for communications where a high degree of security is required. Covert radio frequency communication requires scrambling the signal or trunking between frequencies to avoid interception. Furthermore, the mere presence of radio signals can be detected and cause problems for any RF-based covert communications. By using ultrasonic signals converted to acoustic waves, the communication system will be impervious to traditional RF detection systems. In his patent, he states, by way of example and not limitation, that the disclosed invention is useful in variety of applications, including undercover operations, industrial applications, and many commercial uses in various media. In other words, this technology may be useful for surveillance, harassment, corporate espionage. Imagine that. That's what it's being used for already. This method of sound propagation could explain the harassing audio many people are subjected to that is described as sound that bombards the system through vibrations in the home. Not to be outdone by the private sector, the DoD became keenly interested in the microwave auditory effect. As with most new discoveries, the government eventually finds a way to weaponize most novel technology. The microwave auditory effect was no different. Furthermore, all branches of military begin researching microwave technology. It pertains to both physical and psychological weapons. Termed non-lethal weapons, this class includes microwaves as well as other forms of directed energy that will be discussed later. The microwave auditory effects is specifically mentioned in Army's Ampelindum and Non-Lethal Technologies Worldwide Bioeffects of Selected Non-Lethal Weapons, released through the Freedom of Information Act. This document was written in 1998, mentions the value of microwave auditory effect, communicating with a hostage without his captors hearing. Furthermore, it mentions its usefulness in providing a disruption condition in a person unaware of this technology. Not only might it be disruptive to the sense of hearing, it could be psychologically devastating, and one certainly heard voices within one's head. Moreover, microphones placed next to the person experiencing the voices cannot pick up the sound. The most troubling comment in the document states humans have been subjected to this phenomenon for many years. Imagine that. Indeed, a Newsweek article from August 22, 1964, and an article from Defense Electronics 1993, it was stated the FBI enlisted the help of a Russian scientist named Igor Smirnov. Smirnov had been researching the ability to phone subliminal messages in the head for many years. During the Branch Davidian siege in Waco, Texas, the FBI met with Smirnov in Arlington, Virginia to request the use of his technology to end the siege. Their plan was to pipe the voice of God, I call it the voice of Satan, into the head of David Koresh in order to convince him to turn himself into the authorities. According to people who intended to meet with the FBI, Smirnov had bought only entry-level equipment and was not compatible with FBI computers. To our knowledge, Smirnov's acoustic mind control technology was not used at the siege in Waco for that reason. Of note, Smirnov did most of his research at Moscow's Institute of Psychocorrection and marketed his technology to the West through a Canadian company called Psychotechnology Research Institute. Seeking U.S. partners, PRI went to SRS Technologies, now part of Mantech International Corporation. Interestingly, Mantech is based in my hometown of San Antonio, Texas. This is John Hall talking out of his book Guinea Pigs. This is not me. Weaponized versions of the microwave auditory effect and acoustic wave technology include the Medusa weapon and the S-Quad silent sound spread spectrum, respectively. The Medusa weapon, mob excess deterrent using silent audio, is the brainchild of Dr. Lev Sadnovic. The initial research was funded by the Navy from 11/19/2003 to 5/19/2004 under contract number M67854-04-C-1012. The Navy was interested in using the MAE as a remote personnel incapacitation system by inducing distress sounds into the human head. The research only made it through phase 1 in the Navy Small Business Innovation Research System. Dr. Sadnovic has continued working on the Medusa project through Sierra Nevada Corporation. The S-Quad was developed by Dr. Oliver Lowry and is described in U.S. Patent number 5159703 as a silent subliminal presentation system. In the patent abstract, the device is described as a system in which non-audio carriers in the very low or high frequency range may be modulated with desired intelligence and propagated into the brain. Silent Sounds recently claimed they now have the ability to analyze the human EEG, replicate it or store it, transmit it like a modified EEG waveform into a intended target. Specifically, emotional subsets may be stored, like an emotion dictionary, and trained into a target that will display the desired emotion or behavior. Edward Tilton, the president of Silent Sound, stated in a letter dated 13 of December 1996 that all schematics of the system have been classified by the U.S. government. Silent Sound technology was alleged to be used in the first Gulf War to subliminally induce Iraqi soldiers to surrender, according to 2 news briefs from ITV News Bureau, Ltd, London. According to the news briefs, one of the soldiers involved was quoted as saying they were surrendering in droves, almost too fast for us to keep up with. An entire book could easily be written on the research development of technologies meant to subliminally control the human mind or place perceived auditory hallucinations into the head. I have attempted to present some of the high points of this research to demonstrate the possibility of the technology simulating, that means mimicking, mental illness. Medical doctors on the front lines of the field, complaints of hearing voices they present to family practice clinics and eventually psychiatric offices. It's my opinion the medical community is largely ignorant of these technological advancements. The adage that the patient hearing voices that their physician cannot hear is delusional until proven otherwise no longer holds true. In this book, I've demonstrated the government's willingness to experiment on the general public as well as the factual existence of technology with the capability of inducing perceived auditory hallucinations. Perhaps the medical community, when confronted with patients of complaining of suspected surveillance and hearing voices, should rule out criminal etiology as well as psychiatric one. There are currently too many people voicing complaints of stalking, surveillance, and auditory harassment that are strikingly identical for it to be a delusional order or psychosis in every case. While I do not deny these disorders do exist, I'm merely suggesting that with our known history on non-consensual experimentation, we entertain causes of auditory hallucinations other than mental illness in some cases. And folks, it's going on. And if you go back to V2K, one of my videos on V2K, I talk about my experiences. I don't have time today because it's a long video. But yeah, it's really going on. And if you're not targeted and you're watching this and you're like, dude, what are you saying? All right, well, go ask the million of other people going through the same thing. Why is everybody saying the same things happening to them? It's not mental illness at all. It's a non-consensual experimentation being done on us. God bless y'all. Have a great day. And I will be doing, I'll do another video tomorrow. God bless y'all.